Hey, welcome back to the podcast. I am Justin Stacy.
I'm Nate Thomas.
I'm Josh Matney.
And welcome back. I feel like we have been gone so long. And it actually has not been that long. Yeah, my name is. Yeah, it hasn't been that long. It's only been, 2 months? End of June or sometime in June is when we stopped releasing videos, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think so.
Like that.
Yeah, so it hasn't been that long, but it feels like forever, And I miss talking to you guys.
It definitely became a odd little routine that I got used to. It's like,
yes.
And then when it stopped happening, it's like, I should be.
What do I do? What do I do with my life? Yeah. I know we've all been busy, especially you, Nate. It seems like all summer you've been.
It's been the best summer.
Yeah,
it's been great. I've done church camps. I've done a little bit of traveling. I mean, for me, it's been amazing.
That's great. That's great. Well, for myself, we're doing a lot of medical stuff with my wife and with her kidney issues. But so just it's been busy, but it hasn't been the most fun thing for either of us, especially her. But it's just something we have to do, and I won't get too personal into this. Josh, you doing anything fun this summer?
I mean, aside from playing with Corbin and stuff, that's about it. I mean, really.
What about the con you went to? Why don't you tell about that a little bit?
That was pretty cool. We got kind of like my first official con with celebrities. Got this cool little Predator Funko Pop. You can see that. And got a Dr. Cortex from Crash Bandicoot.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet.
That is cool one.
It was what was it called? It was in Gatlinburg. What was it called?
Yeah, I honestly don't even remember.
I don't remember what it was called either.
But like
Pigeon Con.
There was like quite a few people there. That couple people from the Power Ranger series. Only really one from like the ones that we watched. Probably Justin. The original Black Ranger was there. The other ones I don't really. They must have came a little later. Like I didn't really recognize them. Of course, Lisa got to meet the two people from Halloween Town. I got to meet Alicia Rose from Sleepaway Camp. There was a couple people who did Dragon Ball Z voices, Frieza being the one that stood out, and the guy who does like a bunch of Disney stuff. Like he played Max in the Goofy movie and the cartoons. And a couple guys from the Comic Book Men show, not Kevin Smith or Mosley, but the other guys.
Ching, I forget his last name. Asian, yeah. He was really cool in that series. I liked him a lot. That was one of my favorite shows, like just reality TV shows, is Comic Book Men. It's really good. It was probably that phase where I was really accepting that I was becoming a nerd. And so Big Bang Theory obviously helped influence that, and also Comic Book Men during that same time frame. All right, good stuff. Well, we are kicking off our summer blockbuster extravaganza. I don't know if that's what we want to title it, but that's what I just call it. So sit back, relax, put your feet up as we open a bottle of pop culture.
Gonna talk about some really cool stuff. Well, Josh, Nate, and I, we're gonna blow this thing up. We're gonna talk about the movies you love. And if you don't, well, that's just tough. But we're gonna talk about shows that are awesome. You'll say, whoa! When we talking about Blossom. This will be your one and only stop for everything nerdy in a bottle of pop culture.
All right, so for our summer blockbuster extravaganza, we have decided
never.
That's right. We have decided to dive into Jaws. And for me, when I think of summer blockbuster, Jaws is first on the list.
It has to be.
It has to be. I feel like it started the blockbuster craze. You know,
did Star Wars come out before Jaws, or did
Star Wars didn't come out till May 4th, 1977. I was trying not to be that guy. It didn't work. I'm that
you're the only one old enough here to have known that. We don't know it
until 78.
Oh, that's a good point. So you're not old enough to know. You're just good at history.
I do remember random trivia, but ask me what I had for lunch today, and I'll be like, lunch.
Food.
Random trivia is my jam.
Good stuff. So watching this, I mean, clearly when I was a kid, I watched this multiple times, and even as an adult, I've watched it multiple times. This is the first time I watched it post-pandemic.
Oh.
And so a lot of my talking points is related to that, but I'm not going to get into that.
I can see that.
Yet. All right. So I guess starting us off with a synopsis, the good old Google synopsis that's always terrible. All right. When a young woman is killed by a shark while skinny dipping near the New England tourist town of Amity Island, Police Chief Martin Brody wants to close the beaches, but Mayor Larry Vaughn overrules him, fearing the loss of tourist revenue will cripple the town. Good American that guy is. Oceanologist Matt Hooper and grizzled ship captain Quint offer to help Brody capture the killer beast, and the trio engage in an epic battle of man versus nature. That's not a terrible synopsis.
Pretty good, accurate one too.
Yeah, pretty accurate.
I want to do a synopsis that says like wildlife affects tourism in a main town. Just leave it at that.
Yeah, for real. So I don't know that I ever considered Jaws as being a scary movie. Like even as a kid, I don't think I was ever really scared. It's a good thriller, suspense. But I think it's just because number one, I hate water. I've always hated water. I'm a fair-skinned person. I hate the sun. I hate the beach. I hate water. So this is not anything where I could ever picture myself being in this situation. I'm never going to get a shark bite because I'm not going to be in the water, So I guess that's why it's not scary to me. But I read something kind of interesting about this movie in that post-Jaws, this really changed American culture, American beach culture. Mm-hmm. That people became afraid of sharks because of this movie, and that it actually had an impact on tourism of beaches for a very long time. Mm-hmm. And I think it's kind of funny, and I almost bet that that's what spawns Shark Week, because Shark Week really is showing, I guess,
on down the road, yeah,
right later down the road, because you're basically trying to fix an issue to where you're trying to show the good aspects of a shark and what they're what they're beneficial to, and that they're actually not that scary. They're not going to just eat all of humanity. They don't do that, and that you don't really have these lone wolf sharks, which is what was in Jaws. He was a loner. He was doing things on his own. So I just think it's interesting that a movie can change, and it's typical for everything, really. A movie can change our culture, and this is one that has, in probably a negative way.
Really, you don't even have to watch the movie to know about Jaws. You just know what Jaws is. That's how ingrained it is in our culture, because it's been referenced to death. The music is iconic. There's quotable lines from the movie, and it's like the poster is very iconic. Everything about this is just, I don't know. It's
so,
yeah.
Here's a fun fact. One of what I would consider an iconic, what I thought was a poster, is the cartoon version of Jaws going up, and you have someone swimming above, and he's going to basically eat that person. But apparently that was actually a promotion to an accompanying book of the movie. It wasn't for the movie itself, but now it's in the zeitgeist that it just tied to the movie. But yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting too.
And this has so many Steven Spielberg highlights, the way he shoots things and the way he can make tension for the most little things. The one thing I noticed rewatching this, the scene where they first get a hold of Jaws with the fishing reel, like how they slowly were reeling things, locking things up, and then putting their feet on the board, like just that moment of like tension building. I'm like, this is classic Steven Spielberg right here. And this, like you said, this movie changed beach culture, and like it gave Americans new type of fear like they never had before, at least that I know of.
What were you going to say, Nate?
I was going to say the fear in Jaws, I agree, is not from the water. And I don't mind the ocean, but I don't go out very far. Like, I'm not a fan. If I never go to the beach again, I'm fine. But the fear in Jaws is there's something that can get you that you can't find, that you can't see. I think that's where the fear comes from. It's the fear of the unknown. I might make the argument that Jaws is the predecessor, the spiritual predecessor to the slasher films.
Yeah.
But what's so scary about Halloween, which we're going to talk about later, I know. What's so scary about Halloween is there's somebody chasing you and you can't get away.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What's so scary about Jason Voorhees? He's after you, you can't get away. Same with the shark. If the shark is chasing you, you don't really know what it is. I think you could almost make the argument that Jaws is, if not the first, then the predecessor of the slasher film.
That's a really good point.
I know, man. I should get a PhD in film.
That's a really good point.
Boom.
And you got like three people completely out of their kind of element. Like they're not on land. They're in the shark's house right there. And it's like they can't go anywhere. They're trapped. They're stuck on this boat.
The idea of that is scary.
Yeah.
It is scary. And, and the fact that Jaws is essentially coming up from the depths. There's something sinister and evil in lore, just about something coming up from the depths, and even the ocean. A lot of Greek mythology and stuff is centered around the ocean, and you have your Greek gods and stuff dictating the ocean in evil ways. And I think your wildlife in the ocean is going to have a fear element. Killer whales, sharks. Great white sharks. It's just the fear of the depths of the ocean. What's under there? You can't see it.
And the fact that we don't know like a good portion of it still is kind of up there,
It's the fear of the unknown.
Wait a minute. I thought The Meg was a documentary.
It's interesting that so there was the shark movie that came out a few years ago. Was it called Megalodon or something?
The
Meg.
That's what I was saying.
Yeah, and it's not as good as Jaws. Like, it's nowhere near it, and it's a much bigger shark.
Because it's action.
I guess so. It's not telling us that good of a story.
Jaws is cerebral.
Yeah,
Jaws.
It's good.
Steven Spielberg made a standard with shark films that nobody can touch. The only other film that's just as entertaining as Jaws is probably Deep Blue Sea, but Jaws is just like king of the shark creature feature, films.
Yeah, nothing's ever matched it.
Jaws is about the people.
Mm-hmm.
Every other movie is about the monster.
That's a good point.
Deep Blue Sea is about the monster. The Meg is about the monster. Jaws 2, 3, and 4 is about the monster. Orca is about the killer whale. I mean, we can keep going. But Jaws is about, this is the people. How's it invested in the characters? I can't name a character from The Meg other than Jason Statham, which, by the way, is not his character's name.
Right.
Yep. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's about the shark.
Mm-hmm.
And sorry, I told you I wasn't going to watch the movie again, but I could talk about it all day.
That's a good point because, with Jaws, you have iconic characters.
Mm-hmm.
And of course Jaws is the antagonist, but like you have Hooper, Quint, and Brody, and it's like they stand out. They're their own character. They have their own personalities.
It's been almost 50 years and we're still naming them by name.
Yeah. And like even though Quint is kind of an airhead, like you still find it interesting to watch what he's going to do. Like yeah.
So Quint in this movie is my favorite character for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely caught some things this time watching that I hadn't caught before. I think some very important details about his character. The USS Indianapolis. I had not caught that before. I probably had heard it and just not caught it. Didn't click the historical reference of what that was.
True story, right?
Yep. And I would love to see, like, if they were going to make a prequel to Jaws, show us that story.
Mm-hmm.
How hasn't that been put on film?
I know, like, that would be a wonderful, you know, you could be a prequel to Jaws. If that happened the way he says it happened, then you could have great white sharks in this, many apparently, and attacking the soldiers of the USS Indianapolis. That would be such a great film.
Yeah.
And the fact he survived it, you know? So I loved that. I also, I found it interesting that the way that story got brought up is that they were comparing scars. And he had the one on his arm, and Hooper said, you know, what's the one on your arm? No, it was actually Brody that said, what's the one on your arm? He said, oh, that's where I got a tattoo removed. And they said, what was the tattoo? And he said it was the logo of for the USS Indianapolis. And it's interesting he got it removed. I thought that was the more interesting story, because to me, that it's for one or two reasons. Either that was such a devastating event to him that he had to get it removed to stop reflecting on it, stop remembering it, like a PTSD type thing, or he was ashamed of it. He was ashamed to be a part of the ship that delivered the missile that destroyed Japan. Right. And I wonder if that's the bigger takeaway that he was saying. This is why I got it removed, because I'm ashamed of that. And then, obviously it doesn't dive into it. We don't get that. But that's what was running through my mind, is that one of those two reasons is why he got that removed.
Right. In 2016, there was a movie that was released called USS Indianapolis, Men of Courage. It starred Nicolas Cage, Tom Sizemore, Thomas Jane, and a few other people. Those are the main characters. It budgeted at $40 million, at box office at 1.6. So it was a huge flop, but it's available on Tubi if anybody wants to watch it, which I'm totally going to this week.
Wow.
So they could actually make a movie about that. That would not be a piece of garbage.
They could. They could. Absolutely. And the fact that, you know, you're implementing Quint's story, that's making it fantasy. You don't have to completely stick to a historical narrative on that.
Right.
Just borrow enough history and then add Quint's story to it.
I agree.
It would be wonderful. It would be such a good movie. So I was very impressed when I heard that story from Quint. Because before, I honestly looked at Quint as just, like you said, Josh, an airhead. He was
right.
The loudmouth, like he, you know, didn't work well with others type thing. But then this watch, I'm like, he is my favorite character. He is the most relatable character. You know, he's been through it.
He has like the most layered, layered character. And I do like how he has this back and forth between Hopper. Like he sees him as this rich, spoiled college guy or something like that, and he's like this sort of, I don't know what you call blue collar person that works on the ocean, but like, you know, just kind of a, you know, like two different type of classes, almost button heads.
It's also interesting how much class warfare you kind of get in this movie. You know, and I'm wondering, you know, was that something that was going on a lot in the culture of the 70s? Is class warfare, blue collar versus white collar?
I mean, it's always going on.
It's still a thing, but like it was. I mean, he was always talking about, you know, the college educated versus the working class, and you still get that in the culture.
Yeah, you do.
And so, you know, I guess back then, like college wasn't, you know, it was almost like a thing. Like it was. Not everybody went, and you know, same kind of here, but it's not as much. Like now, it's like so many people goes and they get degrees and they really can't use it, or they wind up coming back home. And
it was probably in the 70s. It was probably the beginnings of what you would consider the college elite, to where
Yeah,
people are going
right.
to college, they're getting well educated, they're getting these higher ranked jobs, and then really getting a persona, a cockiness about themselves. And then you get the reflection of that from the blue collar that didn't get that, and they're, you know, resentful of people who. So I feel like this is maybe the beginnings in the culture of that, and it's just expounded every decade from there. You know, I'm hopeful that we are entering an age where it's starting to reverse itself, to where, you know, blue collar jobs are being seen, and I think you're seeing a little more of it, to where people are thinking more highly of blue collar jobs.
You are with the focus on the trades.
Yeah, focus on the trades. Exactly, that's what I was thinking of. And those jobs are becoming such higher paid jobs now because of the demand. There's nobody went into over the past, you know, 20 or 30 years. There was such a focus of keeping people away from those positions, of wanting everybody to go. When I was going through school, my parents, my grandparents, it was always you got to get a college degree and get a good paying job. And that, I think that was just forced through our generation. And sure, that's a good message, but it trained us as a generation to not even think about blue collar jobs. And so now there's such a demand for blue collar jobs that I think it's going to have to shift back to where, you know, you can go to college or go to trade, do something, doing a trade, and you're going to make good money that way too.
I agree.
Which I think is a good thing. I really do. But this is
it,
not a politics podcast. I don't know what we're doing here.
Like, you need plumbers, you need electricians, you need, you know, people that can actually do these things. Because let's face it, like, you know, whatever degree you get, I mean, it's not really going to help you in that field. So,
right.
Like, mine's, you know, if I was to see electrical wiring, like, okay, yep, know nothing, you know, get somebody who knows what they're doing here.
I mean, to work for the federal government at the to work at the Social Security Administration for the federal government, you have to have a bachelor's degree in anything. What a waste. My ex-wife worked there for years. She had a bachelor's degree in English or English literature. I can't remember which, and it doesn't matter. But she was like, this is a waste of paper. And it was.
Truthfully, I think almost any job, this includes white collar jobs, you can train on the job better than a college education.
Oh yeah.
Like, if you know, I think college should be to help people think logically and help form a more educated thinking American society. But I don't necessarily. The degree is less important, I think. And I also think that the degree should maybe be less specific outside of trades. Trades, you know, if you're going into a certificate program or anything like it's trade specific, then obviously that has to be the case. But otherwise, I don't think it really necessarily has to be. Just a general knowledge of how to think critically is the most important thing you can give society. And then whenever they get a job, have the on training for, you know, new hire on training to be specific to that line of work. And you're going to learn so much more that way with a hands-on experience in all cases.
I'm sure there are exceptions to that, but I agree.
Yeah. We're talking about a bunch of things. It's not Jaws related here.
And that's why doctors that put reattach arms bitten off by sharks should only have to go to trade school.
That's
now
right.
Tie it back together.
That's right.
That's also not true. Don't quote me on that.
Yeah. So what else do we?
Let's talk about how greedy the mayor is.
Yes.
Like, capital over casualties, you know?
Yep. That was definitely something. That was more of what I was noticing, you know, what I was saying, a post-pandemic viewing of this, where I kept seeing reflections of our past 2 years in this movie, to where, you know, the right thing to do was what Brody suggested to begin with. You close the beach until this is resolved. And then the mayor, of course, pushed back. The business owners pushed back. We can't do that. We're going to lose revenue. Well, that's the same things we heard over the past couple of years related to COVID. we can't shut down the economy because everybody's going to lose money. We can't do it. So we end up having to choose the latter. And that's exactly what I was saying. Jaws played COVID-19 in this.
And honestly, you can see that argument. I'm not a small business owner, but I'm a pastor of a church. I can remember that argument that well, if we're not meeting, are we going to have money to operate? Because bills still have to be paid. And it wasn't that we didn't care about people,
right?
But there is something to be said for you have to pay bills whether you're open or not. And I'm not saying you put casualties underneath, but I can at least understand that conversation.
I definitely understand it. The livelihood of the business is dependent on tourism in this case. And if you don't have tourism, then all these businesses are going under. And that was the same argument in the pandemic when it was going strong. All these businesses, and a lot of businesses did go under. We did close down for a month. I don't know what the length of time was that we were very restricted in what was open and what was not. I don't think it was that long. It was like a couple months maybe, but a lot of them didn't survive that,
right.
Which I think goes to show you how really, you call it paycheck to paycheck when you're talking about a person, an individual, but that's really what businesses are living to.
Yes,
paycheck to paycheck, and they can't miss a month. If they do, they're under. And I think that goes to show you just something deeply wrong in American society, that maybe with the cost of goods or the cost of operating or the cost of whatever. There's just something deeply wrong here that a business can't make it more than a month without having that steady income coming in. They don't have reserves, and it's a shame. It's a shame that we live in that society, but we do.
And also, they probably, looking at it now, as I was watching, I'm like, really, they could just not go in the water. I mean, they could still have the beaches open. They could still have like the restaurants open, but it's like, just don't step foot in the water. The dock is still there.
Point. That's a good point. Logically, you could have the beaches open. Just don't go in the water. You can even go, ankle deep.
Yeah.
Just don't go in the deep end. Like, it would be fine. So logically, some things about this movie didn't make sense. Another thing that now I don't know like the medical science of fish and animals of the 70s, but I'm going to assume that there were tranquilizers during that day. And I would assume that all you need to do is get one of those harpoon guns that you shot Jaws with a bunch of times and lace it with these tranquilizers, and you're done. But that doesn't make a very good movie.
That's the thing. You can't have too much logic in these type of movies, because it would just be like pretty much the length of a trailer.
1 minute. Well, we got him.
It's a TikTok video.
Boom. Roll credits.
Roll credits. Yeah. So yeah, you can't logically think about these movies too much, but it is fun to dissect, I think.
Yeah. And you made a good point about like reserves. Like, for a lot of businesses, they don't have safety nets for situations like, well, any type of disaster situations. So, if they get hit hard, I mean, what they got to do, they got to lay people off. They got to cut back on hours, whatever that may be, to make up for the lost profit.
And that's the problem. I mean, we don't have a safety net either, for job loss or anything like that. I mean, we have unemployment. I guess you can consider that a safety net, but not everybody can qualify for it. But business owners should have a safety net too, especially for things like the pandemic. When you do need to close down the economy for this reason, there should be a safety net, some kind of like, okay, these business owners, whatever bills that they would normally have, you don't have to pay that over,
Better yet, just make all goods and services free during a pandemic. Hey, put everybody on the same pay scale and let them all live the same. Now we really are in a socialist society.
There we go.
I'm just saying, if we're going to go that far, that's the direction you're going.
Yeah,
it is.
you're going, but
well, I think it is. I mean, I'm more of an advocate for a more restricted form of capitalism, a more socialized capitalism, I guess you could call it. So anything that it would be more fair and safe and have safety nets, I'm for, but I know a lot of business owners, a lot of, I guess, more pro-capitalists are completely against that idea. Just let free market reign. Well, we see what happens when just free market reigns. You don't have any safeguards, and then you have a pandemic. You have a Jaws come in, and what happens? You're under, right?
Mm-hmm.
And and maybe it's just that we should be okay with people going under or business going under. It's
there is something to that, although I don't think tonight's the night to discuss it.
It doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel right to have, especially small mom and pops, because your big businesses are always going to make it. They do have the reserves. Your Amazons. Amazon doesn't have brick and mortar. Well, they do, but that's not where they make their money. And then Walmart, they have reserves. So the big ones are always going to make it. The mom and pops is what always ends up having to close down. And it's a shame, but here we go again. I didn't realize Jaws was going to bring up all these political issues.
It's good.
I think you're missing that Appalachian liturgy money.
I mean, the one thing, aside from the class war, the between the two classes and the greediness of, the mayor and stuff, the one thing I did like about this movie was it's a small group of people in such a small area, and you made almost a 2-hour movie about it.
Yep.
Right.
And it's that's good filmmaking right there.
It is.
And you have these moments like you were talking about earlier where they're in talking about their past and their scars and whatever. I mean, that was pretty good and pretty well done as far as because it didn't bore you, it drew you in. And it takes a good filmmaker like Steven Spielberg to make it, just use very little and make a pretty good epic film as Jaws.
Let's talk about Spielberg. While we were talking a few minutes ago, that's been a little while, I pulled up Steven's biography on Wikipedia. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to not be comprehensive, but I'm just going to go to 1975, Jaws, 1977, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, 1981, Raiders of the Lost Ark. These are movies he directed. 1982, E.T., 1982, he produced Poltergeist. Well, he didn't direct it. 1983, he directed Twilight Zone, the movie. 1984, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. 1984, The Color Purple. Talking about an iconic film. 1985, The Goonies, which I thought was a Richard Donner film, but whatever. 1987, Empire of the Sun. 1989, Indiana Jones and the Lost Crusade. 1991, Hook. 1993, Jurassic Park. 1993, Schindler's List. 1997, The Lost World. 1998, Saving Private Ryan. Oh, and Amistad was 1997. And we're not even to the 2000s yet. Yep. That cat is a genius. Yeah. If he's not the greatest filmmaker of all time, he's no lower than number 2. I will fight anybody who tells me otherwise.
I can't think of anyone better.
No,
I really can't.
I feel like the 80s, Steven Spielberg, aside from Stephen King, is the name that comes to mind when you think of the 80s and late 70s. Yeah.
Well, from 75 to 90, Steven Spielberg is the biggest film director in the world. Maybe even through the night. I mean, Jurassic Park alone made him number 1 in the 90s.
Yeah.
Anyway, I was just going to say, look, the dude has a style. Look at the way he filmed Jaws. Now I know that the mechanical Jaws, Bruce, broke down, and that's why you didn't see it as much. But that's genius filmmaking because you're afraid of what you can't see.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I mean, the guy, he just makes movies that I want to watch.
And I love
the whole thing with the fin coming out of the water. That little bit of that little detail thing that just it's iconic. No matter what parody or other film you see that happen to, it's well, they're getting that from Jaws.
How many movies and TV shows since the fin comes up and that's where it came from?
Yep.
And I guess that's the way great whites really act. I've never seen one in real life.
I love the movie, a suspenseful thriller that doesn't show you the villain until very late in the movie. I love that. And I feel like a lot of, modern movies just go away from that now. It's like, first 30 minutes, you're getting plenty of villain.
Now they give you everything in the trailer.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's
you ever
true.
seen the trailer for Jaws? The trailer for Jaws is underwater. If I remember correctly, like the opening credits. You don't see the shark?
Isn't it in the perspective of Jaws? Like you are the eyes of it. I think so. Yeah, that's brilliant because the movies work better when you don't see the antagonist until close to the end.
I agree.
Anymore, if I see like a teaser trailer alone, I try to stay away from the full trailer because I feel like if they give me a teaser trailer and it already draws me in, I'm going to be like, okay, I don't want to see any more because I have been burnt a couple of times watching the trailer and then find out like all the stuff that should not be in there kind of spoiled some things for me.
Yeah.
Well, even now, what they release as a teaser trailer is a shorter trailer. Mm-hmm. It's not a teaser at all. I mean, that's another podcast for another day. But the way we market movies today, you know what you're going to see before you buy a ticket.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Now, I understand when I go to see a movie called Spider-Man, I'm not expecting world-shattering changes to come. It's a superhero movie. I understand that. But if I went to see a movie called Jaws, I might want to be surprised.
Yeah.
Of course, that was also 47 years.
Maybe like the way the internet is now, because like there's so much it gets out so quickly.
Oh, spoilers are a big money business.
Yeah. And like, back then all you had to do was like have like a drive-in or something that would play something and then or maybe like a cutout of a, but now it's like you have to make sure that your film is being remembered after, because like you may have a good trailer, but then you got like 5 or 10 other movies that's trying to like come out too.
Well, when you want to watch a movie trailer, where do you go?
Movies.
No, where do you go now to watch movies?
Oh no, I mean now it's like YouTube or sometimes even
in 1975 you didn't have a computer in your house. There was no internet. So if you saw a trailer, it'd come on in the middle of a show. You were watching on TV, maybe, or in a movie to see something else that spring. It has changed completely.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Jaws.
And I think that's going to
just analyze Jaws all day.
And I feel like the way the marketing is like, it has to keep up with the culture of the way film is now, because back then it wasn't as it didn't seem, maybe I'm wrong, but it didn't seem as competitive as it is now, because almost like there's like so many ways to check out film now with streaming, and then you got to make sure your film is just being known. It's almost like it's tougher.
Yeah, I would agree with that for sure.
But
Jaws is just a classic. Like I enjoy this movie a lot.
And look at the cast. I mean, Roy Scheider was a well-respected actor before, but he died as Chief Brody.
Yeah.
Robert Capshaw, is that right? Who played Quint?
Sounds like it.
He had been in a million movies, and then there's this young buck, Richard Dreyfuss, and looking on this side of it, the dude's a legend. Just those three alone. I mean, it's well done. Mrs. Brody was in 3 of the 4 Jaws movies. I don't remember her actual name, but I mean, it's so well acted. It's well shot. The scenery, the settings, special effects were kept to a minimum. It's a brilliant film.
And I really like how they use the little barrels as I'm like, you be watching and the barrels will pop up and you're like, uh-oh, something's gonna happen. Like just those little things. It's like that's so cool.
Here's a question to Josh. Have you played the Jaws game that I have, the board game? You haven't?
What?
No, I haven't.
So I have a Jaws board game. I've had it for years. Haven't played it in a long time. This is something that us 3 need to play. Like we really do. And it's interesting. It actually matches the movie to a T. So it's a 2-part game. The first part is one person plays Jaws and the other, I think 2 to 3 people, it plays up to 4 players. So 2 to 3 people will play the main characters of the movie. You'll have Brody, Hooper, and Quint. Okay. And the goal of the first part of the game is to shoot Jaws with the barrels. So it's a hidden location. So whoever the Jaws player is will navigate around the beach, and the other players have specific things based on who they are that they can do. Like the Brody can close certain beaches down and keep people. Jaws is basically trying to eat people. So the people are in the water. He is trying to eat people, and the other three is basically trying to shoot him with the 3 barrels. So at some point, either Jaws has ate so many people that he levels up, he becomes Super Jaws or something, or he gets shot with 3 barrels. And at that point, it goes to part 2 of the game. So in part 2 of the game, the 3 characters is on Brody's or Quint's ship, and it is basically a 3 versus 1 war around this ship. Jaws is attacking the ship, trying to sink the ship, and the other three is basically stabbing him and shooting him with anything they got. And based on how well the first part went, either the 3 characters got leveled up with extra items or whatever if they did well, or if Jaws did well, then he gets benefits in the second level. So it's a 2-part game, and it's really, really good game. The only negative that I have in the game is that because it's a 2-part game, it's a very long game. Oh. So the first part is going to take you an hour to hour and a half. The second part could take you another hour and a half. That's a 3-hour game. That's a very long time to be spending in one game. So that's the only thing the negative thing I had with it. And what we end up doing is we would basically play like one part, like the first part, in one sitting, and then just record the stats. And then in the next sitting, we do the second part at a different day. That's how we would treat it. But this is something we need to do. I think that would be fun.
That'd be fun.
That would be fun.
I want to apologize. I was moving around a lot. I was trying to get my shoes off without having to get away from this camera. So I was moving around. If anybody's watching, it looks like I'm having a stroke. I did. But I was listening to Justin and trying to do it.
Well, here's the funny thing is I never noticed this. I was mostly looking at myself in the reflection. Oh. So because I'm so conceited, you could have had a stroke and I wouldn't have known it.
He would have kept talking, Nate.
I just kept talking.
That's not funny. I shouldn't do that.
All right. Well, good stuff. Well, we've talked a while about
Except
this.
We haven't answered the question.
What's the question?
Is Jaws the villain? Is the shark the villain?
That's a good question, because can an animal ever be a villain? They're doing what they're meant to. They're doing what's natural. So, can we really apply human morality to animals?
Not in this situation, because I don't think the shark has been altered or mutated in a way by humans. Like, I would say, like some creature features where maybe the creature's has become smarter, or they're more in control by the humans, something like that. But in this case, the shark's just eating, and humans are just in the way.
I mean, it's depicted. Now, again, this is one of those, I guess, fantasy versus fact, where sharks really don't act this way. Sharks really don't go as a loner and start attacking people.
You just ruined the movie. Just kidding.
Okay. but let's say that they did. Well, they're just doing what's natural. It would be if on a safari, someone got attacked by a lion and
Which could happen.
It could happen. Absolutely.
We're in their territory.
You're in their territory. They're doing what's natural.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're doing what's natural, is that evil? Is that really, villainous? From a human perspective, yes, death is evil. We have this morality that we try to uphold, and we see that we see that as a killing. But in the animal kingdom, that's not a thing. That's not a morality they have to uphold.
Right. No, it's survival of the fittest. Like, if you want to survive, you got to eat.
I would say no. That Jaws, and I would add that any other animal that's ever depicted as being, the villain, isn't really the villain. unless it's a situation where they are being controlled, like you said, Josh, by some other force that's not natural. And in that case, they're still not the villain. It's whoever's controlling them would be.
And I think it's what adds the layers to this movie too. Like, because, from like a surface level, you think it is like, okay, the shark is bad or evil. But then when you really watch, it's like, well, it's just two, human versus an animal. An animal is like, well, doing what it's doing, naturally surviving. And the humans are just like, well, they're just like, well, to us, this is evil. So,
right.
And so in a way, yes, there is sort of this like antagonist, protagonist, but I think on a realistic standpoint, not really. I think for a movie, you need sort of some type of antagonistic something, and the shark is in this case. But I think in the full scope of it, he's not really an evil thing or whatever.
So that actually brings up something else to tie it back into the pandemic.
Right. That's what I'm talking about.
To tie it back into the pandemic, one of the things I can remember a couple years ago, 2020, that theologians was kind of tackling. I'm thinking of NT right here, and again, I'm totally using this for what we would talk about in Appalachian liturgy, since it's not really a thing anymore. Is just this whole is the pandemic or is the coronavirus evil? And it's actually the same arguments that the coronavirus, a virus, is doing what it needs to do to survive. It's natural. So the death it's causing, from our standpoint, this is wrong. This is bad. This is evil. This is death. But from the virus standpoint, from a natural standpoint, this is normal. Right. It's just doing what it's meant to do to survive. Mm-hmm. And so in that aspect, it's not evil. It's just from our view of death, it's wrong. But from a nature point of view, it's not. It's just doing what it's meant to do. So I just wanted to tie it once more into the pandemic, because I felt like we didn't. This is the pandemic special now.
And we don't have to do it now, but that could also lead into the whole good, is good, what is good and what is really evil, that philosophy, but we don't have to do it on this episode, but
we should talk. We could definitely talk about the philosophies of good and evil in specific movies, because I think some of my favorite podcasts or YouTubes is on the philosophy of stuff in movies. So,
and
we could definitely
not to get sidetracked too much, but if you really want to watch a good sort of, if you like Vikings, I know this sounds random, but check out The Northman.
Northman?
Yeah. There's a lot of idea, is what he's doing really is he really doing it for the good of his, self, or is he just being selfish? And just check it out, you'll see what I mean.
Interesting.
But yeah,
I like how in the middle of your pitch you said, I know it's really random. Now I can't give you a hard time about it.
All right, well, this has been a great summer blockbuster pandemic special.
Yes, it has.
We talk politics. We talk everything in this. We sure do.
Post summer COVID special with
COVID special Jaws.
Pandemic at the beginning of every season. That's it.
All right. So we do have an announcement. The announcement is for our upcoming season 2, that we will begin the first week of August. I mean, not August. We are already in August. What am I thinking? We'll begin the first week of October, and our theme is going to be holiday movies. So we are going to basically do 4 Halloween movies through the 4 weeks of October. We are going to do a military movie in November, followed by a Thanksgiving movie in November. And then we're going to end it off with 4 Christmas movies late November into December. So 10 total episodes like before, and it's going to be all holiday. So 10.
They used to have this wrestler who called himself the perfect 10, and he'd get in the ring and he'd get up in people's faces and he'd go. And I always thought it was funny. I've always wanted to do it.
There you go.
Anyway.
So yeah, I'm looking forward to the new season. I think it's gonna be fun watching all these, getting in the holiday spirit of all the holidays.
Do you want to tell the listeners what the first movie might be?
Sure. Well, why don't
you don't have to? I mean,
we already know it. We might as well. So why don't one of you go ahead and reveal that?
Joshua.
All right. So the first one will be Halloween, the original Halloween.
Well, there we go.
That is going to. I don't remember. I know that I've seen it, but I cannot remember it. I don't have any. And the one from 1978, 9, so that one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
78, I believe. Something like
that. I
think
you're right.
And I will say that, like, when you watch this one, and if you've already seen like all the other sequels, it does seem like a smaller comparison because it was such a smaller film that was more focused. And then they just kept trying to escalate the whole sequels into bigger and more bolder things. And now it's like you go back and watch, it's like it really wasn't that gory. But yeah, we can talk about that on a whole different episode.
We got a month for that.
That's right. So here's a fun fact. Once again, to tie it back into Jaws, we could have technically been talking about Jaws as a Christmas movie if the original timeline of Jaws had come to fruition. The original timeline was to release Christmas Day, 1974. And I'm thinking, how on earth did anyone in marketing think that Christmas Day was a good movie for this movie? There's nothing Christmas about this movie. Like, it is such a summer movie, and I'm so glad that it got delayed, because if it hadn't, I think it would have bombed.
That really doesn't make sense.
Really doesn't make sense.
Did people, I've been to the movies on Christmas, but did people used to just go to the movies on Christmas Day?
I don't know. Maybe. I mean,
my family always got together Christmas and spent most of the day together. Then when I became an adult, I was like, 2:00, I'm going to the movies.
Yeah.
I've had enough of this.
It's interesting because there's normally always a Christmas release for new movies now. I mean, we've had Star Wars movies come out on Christmas and Spider-Man and stuff like. Yeah. I don't
not on
get
Christmas Day.
Yeah, I don't know.
There are weird. Christmas Day releases.
Yeah, I mean, it makes more sense now with streaming. You can release it anytime. You know.
Okay, buddy.
But
not you, Justin. The dog was grabbing my leg. Okay, buddy. You talked enough. That's not what I was saying. We'll go in a minute.
Okay. Well, to finish this off on our summer blockbuster extravaganza, final quote. Well, this time quotes, actually. It's going to be 2. All right. This is both are from Quint. Y'all know me. Know how I earn a living. I'll catch this bird for you. But it ain't going to be easy. The bad fish. Not like going down to the pond, chasing the bluegills and tomicod. This shark swallow you whole. Little shaking, little tenderizing. Down you go. And we got to do it quick. That'll bring the tourists. That'll put all your businesses on the paying basis. But it's not going to be pleasant. I value my neck a lot more than $3,000. I'll find him for 3, and I'll catch him, and I'll kill him for 10. You got to make up your mind. If you want to stay alive, then ante up. If you want to play it cheap, be on welfare the whole winter. I don't want no volunteers. I don't want no mates. There's too many captains on this island. $10,000 for me by myself. For that, you get the head, the tail, and the whole damn thing. And part 2.
So who gets paid now since Quint's dead?
That's a good point.
Hooper never came back.
That's a good point. All right. Farewell and adieu to you, fair Spanish ladies. Farewell and adieu, you ladies of Spain. For we received orders to sail back to Boston, and so nevermore shall we see you again. Bye, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning into the podcast. We hope that we were able to entertain you at least for a spell. If you see value in our craziness and want to continue supporting us, please follow us on social media. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, like our videos, and share our content with someone you may know. Also, let us know how we're doing. Make suggestions for the podcast. Leave us a comment. Heck, send us an email. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time on the Bottle of Pop Culture podcast.
Ring, 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 ring.
Hello?
Ring, 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 ring.
Hello?
Banana phone.
Did you seriously call me up for that?
No. Where's Justin?
Didn't you hear? He caught COVID.
Wait, what? Seriously?
Yeah, he's pretty sick.
Wasn't he the one that compared Jaws to COVID?
Ironic, right?
Well, that stinks. Are we still on the go fishing?
I have to go to the hardware store first. The boat hitch screw is too small for the truck.
So you're going to need a bigger boat